Okay, so looking at shielding effectiveness first, fundamentally, all the shielding effectiveness measurements that we're going to talk about today, they all have the same concept. You're going to measure the field or the energy or the power that's picked up in the unshielded configuration versus the shielded configuration. And the better off, the more reduction you get, the better your shielding effectiveness is. So in this case, if you are measuring based on the power picked up by the inner conductor, you can measure that unshielded and then shielded. And if you measured everything in something like dB milliwatts, then the math is super easy. One of the things I like to say is that EMC engineers, we don't even want to go back to elementary school math. Multiplication and division, oh boy, that's too much for us. We work in decibels, so we can go with kindergarten math. So we only have to add and subtract. Works great. But one thing that you'll notice is that assuming that, assuming you measured everything right, the power picked up unshielded will always be greater than the power picked up in the shielded configuration, which means that shielding effectiveness will always be a positive number where bigger is better. So something that has a shielding effectiveness of 60 dB is going to be objectively better than something that has a shielding effectiveness of 20 dB. So that makes it very intuitive. One of the ways that you can measure this, obviously there are a lot of ways that you can measure this. I just wanted to highlight this one here. For my money, I think it's one of the best ways. It's going to be one of your fastest ways to cover a very large frequency area. So you will find some details. You will find basically a sketch of how to do shielding effectiveness measurements in a reverb chamber in IEC 62153-4-21. It is remarkably shy on details. I was working through it for a particular client of, okay, step by step, how do you actually do this? And man, it requires a whole lot of fill in the blanks. But again, fundamentally, you're going to, have your cable under test fully within the uniform field area of a reverb chamber. The thing that's labeled WC is called a witness cable. And all that's basically doing is it is giving you a coaxial connection from your cable under test all the way back to the chamber wall. So it basically makes the system continuous. Then again, you can measure that the energy picked up by the cable under test when it is shielded and when it is unshielded. You can also, one of the methods that's actually in 421 is to compare the energy picked up by the cable under test with the energy picked up by the reference antenna. I don't love that. I feel like it would overstate the shielding effectiveness. I prefer to compare unshielded versus shielded of the same cable assembly. But again, lots of different ways to skin the cat. The nice thing about reverb chambers is it lets you get through a lot of frequencies very quickly. And also, it's illuminating your target from all the different angles. That doesn't matter quite as much when you're just testing a standalone cable, but for a lot of applications, that simulates the real world illuminations a little bit better than just a fixed orientation. The limitation, of course, with the reverb chamber is honestly on the low end, right? It's only able to establish that uniform field area down to a certain frequency, beyond, a lowest usable frequency, beyond which you're not getting statistically meaningful data. So whereas most of the test methods have a bound on their upper limit, reverb chamber testing usually has a bound on its lower limit of usefulness.